Hey guys, Dave with Moniology here. Hope everyone is having a great weekend. This is the weekend market review for the weekend of March 17th and 18th, 2018. Let's have a look at what's taking place in the markets today. So we start with the 10-year U.S. Treasury from a daily perspective. It looks like we're kind of correcting a little bit here, and we're below the middle Bollinger Band, and even though we had a nice little bounce here, found some support at the 50 RSI level, it looks like we might have a little bit more downside. When you look at the weekly picture, you see that the RSI broke this week below that 69 level, and that's very, very important. So I think ultimately we start a correction towards this 2.7 level on the 10-year before ultimately finding support and likely breaking back higher towards a 3.1 level. When you look at it from the monthly perspective, we're in a very bullish long-term pattern. We broke out here in late 2016. We've consolidated bullish flag breakout here in late 2018, and we had two very nice hammer patterns in the beginning of the month. But now we're kind of consolidating here below that 3 level, which is okay. We've got positive RSI divergence on a monthly, so a little bit of a pullback is not a problem. But in the long run, I think we break 3% this year and ultimately move higher in what looks to be the beginning of the end of the fixed income bull market for the last 30 years. Looking at gold here, gold seems to be is continuing to show weakness here. It needs to hold this 38 level of RSI support, which was actually the breakout point here when we rallied from 1238. If it does so, then likely it starts moving back higher. But in the meantime, the 50-day moving average is curling lower, and so it might push lower towards this 200-day moving average support. So we'll see. The one thing I'll point out from a daily are that the PPO is creating a positive divergence. So they're consolidating here and look to be curling towards zero. So I think this corrective move is nearing its end, but time will tell. Looking at it from a weekly standpoint, one of the reasons that adds credence to my bullish argument is that it's above the 50 middle Bollinger Band, above the 50-week and the 200-week moving averages, and it's above the 50 RSI level. So there's a lot of support here. Obviously, if that breaks, then we might move down lower to retest this breakout trend line. It could go all the way towards that 1200 zone. I don't think we're going to get there, but I will say that this PPO breaking below zero is not a positive development for the long-term bull case. So stay tuned. Monthly level. Monthly is still in the midst of a consolidation following a major breakout from this 5-year downtrend. So monthly looks very, very bullish. There's nothing really to see here. If it breaks below this trend line, then that's a different picture. The high yield junk bond ETF JNK looks very good as it continues to bounce off and find support off the 200-day moving average. It's consolidating right below the 50 RSI level. Looks like it wants to curl back higher on the PPO and likely break higher on the RSI. So this is a chart that you really want to watch. Does it break below the 200 or break above the 50 to move higher? On a weekly basis, it's finding some resistance at the 50 level on RSI. That's not a positive development, as it's also finding resistance right below that middle Bollinger Band. But again, it's finding support on the 50-week moving average. So which way does it go? There's a lot of indecision at this point. It could go either way. Looking at the monthly continues to kind of consolidate and kind of give up some of its overbought readings over here on RSI. So that's a positive development because it's not going down. It's not quote-unquote crashing. It's just correcting through time, and that's a positive development, as it might take a couple months to reduce this overbought level. But if it does this versus this, that's a very positive development. Crude oil daily. Crude oil looks actually very nice right now. That it looks like the PPO wants to break above zero. Had a very nice hammer pattern on Friday, breaking and closing above the middle Bollinger Band and this crucial 62.40 level of support, or rather resistance here. So looks like it wants to move higher. Looking at it from a weekly time frame gives us a better perspective of what's taking place. But yeah, it's consolidating above this middle Bollinger Band, and it's right below that 60 level on RSI, but if it can break higher and break higher above that 65, 66 level, it looks like it might want to push higher and possibly making a run towards 70 or 75. So whereas I thought we would be going lower, it doesn't look like that's taking place at this moment in time. And again here on the monthly, it found some resistance at that 61 level, but it's curling back and it looks like it wants to move higher again. There's a lot of support around the 59 to 62 level here, so but in the 50-month and 200-month moving averages. So no coincidence that it's moving higher every time it falls on that spot. The Nasdaq daily, it looks like it wants to move higher. It's consolidating after a bit of a pullback here. It's consolidating back around that 60 level. And it likely, if it finds support there, likely moves back higher towards that 7,700 level. On the weekly, this still might be a bearish flag on a weekly. So time will tell what it wants to do here. Does it break lower or does it push back above that 70 level on RSI? It's going to be interesting to watch. And on the monthly, it's still extremely overbought. It's got this bearish wedge pattern, but at the same time, it kind of recaptured it at this point. So the monthly is still in very, very much bullish territory. The Russell looks pretty good here. It broke slightly below the 60 RSI level, but it wants to curl back higher. Had a pullback and looks like it wants to make a run back towards 1620. Russell weekly finding some resistance around that 61 level, but if it can break through that'll mean all-time highs are likely coming. Alternatively, if this bearish flag pattern breaks lower, then this is just a bounce that likely is going to be shorted. On the monthly level, it looks very bullish. I mean, it's back above 70 on RSI, so I'm leaning towards the bullish case here, but again, time will tell. The one thing I'll point out is the PPOs are continuing to curl towards zero. That's not a sign that you want to watch, want to see happen. Now S&P hasn't been as strong actually as the Russell and the Nasdaq on this bounce, but it's still finding support on the 50 and looks like it wants to move back higher, possibly towards 2850. So my hunch is that this week will be a positive week in the markets. We'll see. On the weekly, we're above 50, but we're below 61. So there's some resistance there, but I still think that we're going to be moving higher before going lower at some point later on this year. And on the monthly, very overbought, but overbought means still in a very positive bull trend. The daily, the dollar continues to consolidate here and looks like it wants to make that push finally towards that 92 level. It's consolidating and curling in a positive direction towards that to break that 50 RSI level. So if it does so, expect a move towards 92 sooner rather than later. The one thing I will point out, the PPO are curling towards zero. So if it can't rally soon and get these to curl back up, it can roll over here. The dollar on the weekly doesn't look good at all. I mean, if it breaks above this 38 to 40 level on RSI, like I said, it might make a run towards 92, but ultimately there's a ton of resistance here on momentum. Look at this level here. It served as tremendous resistance here, here, and now we're back to that level. And but PPO is curling towards zero, so should be interesting to see what happens at this level here. And on the monthly, and the monthly just doesn't look good. The PPO is at its lowest point since 2003. It's below the 250 month moving averages, and everything seems to be curling lower. Now the volatility still looks to me like a bullish flag here, and I think volatility will creep up once again in the not too distant future. The PPO is curling back higher, so whereas we might see some more upside in the markets, I think that the upside is far more limited than some folks would like to believe. And here again on the weekly chart, it's finding some very nice support at that 50 level. If it doesn't break it, also support on the 200-week moving average. If it doesn't break lower, expect it to move back higher. Finally, a couple more charts on the monthly volatility. We're still consolidating above this breakout zone. That's a very positive development for volatility bulls. And looking at the weekly chart on the MSWORLD index, It's consolidating around the 50 area. It should be very interesting to see what it does next. Does it bounce, make an attempt to bounce towards 2100, or does it roll over? My hunch is eventually it'll roll over, but it might still make a move towards that 2100 area. And here's looking at it from a monthly perspective. It's the weakest of the indices right now, whereas in 2016, since January, the world index has outperformed domestic and international developed, but that's not the case here. This pullback has been led by emerging markets really falling. So I think that there's more downside before this particular pullback correction is over. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to check us out on Patreon at Moniology / Moniology. At Moniology on Twitter and StockTwits. Patreon, we're looking to get patrons, so if you have $1 to spare, appreciate the work that we're doing. Even $1 goes a long way to helping us reach our goals. Thanks, guys, and have yourselves a wonderful trading week.